Welcome to Sacrilegious Discourse.
I'm husband.
And I'm wife.
Together, we're reading the Bible for the very first time.
We grew up without religion and wanted to know what all the fuss was about.
Well, what have we learned so far?
That God is a dick, and apparently some people believe in talking donkeys?
We're not trying to pass ourselves off as experts.
Nope, we're just reading the Bible for the first time and giving our first take reaction.
If you'd like to join us in this venture, you might consider starting at episode 1.
Otherwise, jump in wherever you like.
All right, let's go read the Bible.
Yeah, let's get to it. Husband!
Wife!
Do you know where the hell we are?
Well, we just finished with Lamentations.
We did.
And so that means that today we're probably getting into the...
Wrap-Up.
Yeah, so we're going to be going over the entire Book of Lamentations.
The whole 5 chapters.
And we're kind of wrapping together in our wrap-up the Q&A and the wrap-up, because obviously it's only 5 chapters, so.
I also have a pop quiz for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How many questions are in this pop quiz?
11.
That makes me happier. I would prefer 10 or less. But 11 is definitely closer to that number. So.
Yes.
All right. You ready to get into this?
Sure as fuck am.
All right, let's do this.
Okie dokie. All right, let's do Lamentations.
Let's do them.
I'm lamenting.
I mean,
that's Lamentations.
Yeah, there was some sad shit to lament, actually.
There was.
Yeah.
So the Book of Lamentations is a collection of poetic laments that express the humiliation, suffering, and despair of Jerusalem and her people.
It left out the bitching by Jeremiah about his state of affairs and how he wanted to use God for retribution, though.
Right. Also that.
Yeah.
For Jerusalem and her people following the destruction of the city by the Babylonians in 587 to 586 BCE.
Sure.
Okay?
Yep.
Now, most critics place the composition, meaning the writing thereof, of the book before the return of the Jews from exile in 537 to 536 BCE.
Okay. The whole book? Or is there some, like that one chapter felt like it was maybe written by Jeremiah?
Well, we'll get there in a second here. Certain passages appear to be word pictures by an eyewitness, and thus would have been written shortly after the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay.
So, like during and then like, right there.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
The prophet Jeremiah, as we know, is the traditional author because he's a weepy little bitch. However, Lamentations was more likely written for public rituals commemorating the destruction of the city of Jerusalem and its temple.
And that tracks. That makes some sense, especially the first chapter.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, it's unlikely that his writing style was very spontaneous and natural.
Yeah.
Kind of grumbly.
Right. Right.
And putting that with, his earlier word choice early on, putting that matched to the poetic form, it's complicated and artificial.
Yeah.
And that is just not very likely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like his chapters in the book that he's supposed to have written with, him and Baruch and whoever else his little scribes were after.
Yeah.
It was not a diary per se, but it was written well enough. But the Book of Lamentations was not the same.
No.
As we pointed out while we were reading it.
Right.
So it was definitely not him.
But it was, they did, if it was written completely by somebody other than Jeremiah and Baruch, then there was that, it was chapter 3 or 4, I can't remember which one it was, but they were talking about how he wanted the retribution on
that
people.
Was reminiscent.
That was very reminiscent of Jeremiah.
Yeah. I believe that was chapter 4.
I felt like that was either written by Jeremiah or Baruch or somebody that was really versed in Jeremiah's teachings would have written that. But it felt personal. So I feel like maybe they threw one little bone in there that might be by Jeremiah, possibly. Maybe
he contributed via some scraps that other people picked up and were like, we should really since we're going to attribute this to him.
We should throw something in by him.
Yeah, give him a bone.
Right.
It's probable that the laments were the product of more than one poet.
Okay.
So not just writers, scribes, but actual poets.
And that makes sense, too, because it didn't really feel the same all the way through either. Mm-hmm. It felt different from Jeremiah, but it didn't feel the same. It felt different
in and of itself, too, even from chapter to chapter.
Yep.
So as far back as tradition reaches, Lamentations has been read on Tisha B'Av, which we have talked about.
Sure.
And that's where they commemorate and observe the end of Jerusalem having, been sacked, as well as the smashing of the second temple later.
Right.
Which apparently happened on the same day.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. It's known as like one of the worst days in Jewish history or something like that.
Yeah. So it's not unreasonable to assume that this was intended for this purpose from the first, which we have kind of discussed, that the poets wrote that, attributed it to Jeremiah, but wrote it specifically with the intent that it would be read before crowds.
Yeah.
Toward that end, the first 4 of the 5 poems, speaking of it being too nuanced and complex for him to have put together, given his writing style.
Right.
The first 4 of the 5 poems are written as acrostics, which we had talked about that the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet are used in succession to begin the lines and sections of those songs.
Yeah.
And then the 5th chapter is not. However, it does have 22 lines, which is how many letters are in the Hebrew alphabet.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe they had that's interesting.
They didn't write it that way because it was the last chapter was different from the other chapters.
Yeah.
And was more about the finality.
Okay.
So
all right.
It was done on purpose, it's believed.
Okay. All right. Yep.
The formal structure served as a mnemonic device and was likely meant to convey Israel's total grief, its penitence, and ultimately its hope.
Got it.
So
I didn't find a whole lot of hope in this, but
I didn't either, but it was mostly lamenting. There was a little bit at the end of one of the chapters that was like, and hopefully God will love us again.
I felt like the most hopeful chapter was probably chapter 1, actually.
Yeah.
Like
same.
that one had some beauty in it and some, it was okay.
Yeah, I didn't mind chapter 1.
Yeah.
But whatever.
That was my favorite one.
But I'm gonna, same. I'm gonna reread this little bit. We read this in the beginning, but I think it bears repeating just because we're talking about how they attributed it to Jeremiah.
Sure.
And that's because the original text was written in Hebrew, but in the Greek, all the various translations thereof, like the Septuagint and its others, they have this extra little intro bit. And it came to pass after Israel had been carried away captive and Jerusalem was become desolate, that Jeremiah sat weeping, and he lamented with this lamentation over Jerusalem. And he said, and then it goes into the first.
Just to give it a preface, like
it's
Jeremiah did this.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So now I have a few notes from a couple of the chapters, just as part of our Q&A. Okay.
Sure.
So that was kind of the wrap up. This is a little bit of Q&A for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So in chapter 1, it talks about his footstool.
Right.
And how Jerusalem was no longer his footstool. And that has been something that he has alluded to before. He has mentioned the earth is his footstool. He's mentioned that his people are his footstool. Yeah. And so there's a question about what specifically he means. It can be one of 2 things specifically. Okay. God is either referring to the house of the sanctuary, which would be the temple itself, which contained the Ark of the Covenant, as mentioned in 1 Chronicles and one of the Psalms.
Right.
Or it could have been the Ark of the Covenant, as mentioned in one of the Psalms, with the mercy seat on which sat the Shekinah or divine majesty. That's where he set his feet when sitting between the cherubim that were on top of the ark. And that was in 1 Chronicles. And I'm going to tell you what a Shekinah is, or a Shekinah. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. Okay. That refers to a dwelling or settling in a special sense, a dwelling or settling of the divine presence, to the effect that while in proximity to the Shekinah, the connection to God is more readily perceivable. So we're almost talking about an idol here, because it's an object. It's like another word for that, because it's saying that this thing that we're not calling an idol has a special place for the presence of God to be felt.
And we kind of talked about the ark being an idol at one point too. Like, I mean, just between
that they
you
carried
and
their God with them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was, so that makes sense.
So to me, that word is just another word for idol.
Right. But
it's more holy.
Right.
It has more meaning because it's, somehow a Hebrew word. So that means it's better. And I'm like, right. So it's an idol then. Got it.
But also by the time that we got to Jeremiah, the ark had been, not mentioned for quite some time. Right. So I don't know that I believe that the ark was still around at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure I believe that either.
They can say that all they want, but I would wager a bet that it was not at the temple.
So do you think the footstool then is referring to the temple and not the ark inside the temple?
It could very well refer to the temple. Definitely, I don't think it's referring to the ark inside the temple, because there's no mention of it in years. I mean, like, it's been years. Yeah. And like, I think it was Solomon? I think that's the last time we actually even heard of the ark.
Well, we did hear something when Hezekiah, either him or one of them guys, found a piece of the Torah in the library, and we're like, whoa, dude. And that's when Josiah started all his reforms.
But did they specifically say the ark though?
I don't know.
I thought it was in the temple.
Well,
that they had found
I know that no, it was in his library.
Sure.
That they found the book.
Okay.
But my thing is, so then the Torah was not in the ark then, and so we don't know if the ark was actually present on ground or not.
I don't think, like, when that was I remember that being said. I remember that bit, and I don't think that to me, it was not enough information to say the ark is still around.
If the ark had still been around, the Torah would have been inside it.
If the ark had still been around, it would have been a much bigger deal than what it... It's literally nothing at this point. Right. It means nothing at this point.
Right. And that's part of why these people are going after the idols of other kingdoms. Right. They don't have their shiny, special golden box. Yeah. So, I mean, if they did, they would have been gathering around that because it was special, golden, and shiny, and they could have been like, this, guys, this was the thing that Moses and peeps carried for 40 years. This. Yeah. And it would have had more cultural relevance in the moment. Right. And it wasn't there. Right. Clearly. Yeah. So then later on in chapter 2, 2 initial letters are transposed in a couple of the verses. Okay. And this is found in 3 instances throughout Lamentations. Okay. And it's been suggested that the reason for the inversion of 2 of the Hebrew letters is that the Chaldeans, just like the Arabians, used a different order than that of the Hebrews. Okay. So it was similar, but not the same exactly. Right. So in chapter 1, this is the suggestion. In chapter 1, Jeremiah speaks as a Hebrew, and that's why things read the way they're supposed to. Yeah. And then in the following chapters, it's suggested he speaks as one subject to the Chaldeans, and that's why you find the 3 different transposed letters. Right. Okay. Not all scholars accept that explanation. It also could have just been a goof. Sure. But the fact that it's the same goof in 3 different places, I don't know what that tells us. Right, right. At least it was consistent. Yeah. Like, when I misspell a word, I usually misspell it the same way in all instances, but not always. Right, right. Sometimes I can spell the same word like 5 different times in the same, 3 paragraphs. Right. So who fucking knows? Yeah. So later on, in chapter 4, we talked about ostriches. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So verse 3 reads...
They said they were heartless.
Well, yeah. Verse 3 reads, even jackals offer their breasts to nurse their young, but my people have become heartless like ostriches in the desert.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Jackals themselves may also be rendered as sea monsters, whales, dragons, or serpents, depending on the translation.
Oh.
But here's why. The word jackal in Hebrew is tannim, is tan, but then the plural is tannin.
Okay.
Which is very similar to the word tannem, which is dragons and sea monsters.
Interesting.
Right. So that's why a lot of times you'll see jackals or dragons where it actually probably more likely means jackals.
Right.
Now, even at that, we don't know if they mean jackals, coyotes, wolves.
Sure.
Just some kind of wild dog or wild beast even. Okay. And I just wanted to get that out there before we talk about the ostriches.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought that was like really interesting because that gets into like, what's a hot dog and what are people going to think like 100 years from now or 500 or 1,000 years from now?
Right.
They might not understand what a hot dog is because it's not a dog that's hot.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, ostriches or owls were thought to lack internal instincts and thus be cruel to their young, like kick them around and stuff.
Okay.
Or they would desert their eggs.
Okay.
Okay. Now, notice I said ostriches or owls.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if you remember, but back in Job, we also came across owls and other birds that were like evil. And it could also be construed as even demons.
Okay.
Do you remember that kind of?
I do.
So it's not really known what bird they're referring to, but it's kind of beside the point almost. Like they're not talking about this bird did this thing.
Right.
Like if the bird was the point of the sentence, it would matter. But what they're saying is there's a beast, some kind of fucking bird who is cruel to its offspring and, deserts them in the desert. The point of this is saying even that son of a bitch bird is able to feed its children, whereas these monstrous mothers are eating their babies.
Right.
That's the point of that sentence.
Okay.
So, and same with like the jackals. They're saying these are wild fucking dogs or dragons, however the translation goes. These are wild beasts, but even they are able to suckle their young, whereas these babies, their mouths are dry because they're so dehydrated and dying of thirst that their tongues are stuck to the roof of their mouth and the mothers are not able to produce milk.
Right, right.
So that's what that section was about.
Got it.
So basically, once again, it's a translation issue.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Yep.
Finally, chapter 5. And that was the weird chapter.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Like that was kind of separate from the other 4. And it was different.
Sure.
Yeah. It's basically a conclusion to the preceding 4 chapters, which, because it fell at the conclusion, therefore it concluded. Right. But literally it's a conclusion. And as mentioned, the acrostic form is no longer observed.
Right.
Okay. The final poem of Lamentations was apparently written in Judah sometime after the fall of Jerusalem.
Okay.
Okay. Only the people of no use to Babylon were left behind in the land, right?
Right.
And this poem reflects on the hardships that those dudes faced.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah.
And it's less a dirge, like the previous chapters were like laments, right?
Yeah.
This chapter was not really like that. Instead, it was the nation's prayer to God for compassion.
Sure.
So, supposedly Jeremiah wrote this. And so in the first 4 chapters, he's like, well, we suck. God left us. Everything's horrible and we hate it. And haha, Edom, you're going to get this too. But then in the last one, he's like, well, we suck, but we brought this on ourselves and everybody turned to God and hopefully, God hear us.
Right, right.
And several Old Testament prophecies, including Lamentations, conclude on a negative or inauspicious note. And chapter 5 is no exception.
Right.
Okay. So consequently, in synagogue readings, it has become customary to conclude the recitation with a repetition of the preceding verse.
Oh.
So if they read this out loud, they would read verse 21 and then they would read verse 22, which is the final, but then they would go back and read verse 21 again. So let me read you how that would go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
21. Restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return. Renew our days as of old. 22. Unless you have utterly rejected us and are angry with us beyond measure. I can see why they would then go
Right.
21. Restore us to yourself, Lord, that we may return. Renew our days as of old.
I'm surprised they don't just leave that last one off. And
Right?
You know what I mean?
Unless you're mad, it's fine. Then we just suck forever.
Yeah.
Whatevs.
Right.
And this practice allows the reading in the synagogue to close with words of comfort.
Got it.
So,
Yeah.
even though
That's a lie.
It is a lie.
It's a nice lie, but it's still a lie.
Yeah. Like, hi, the book doesn't say that. How are you?
Right.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's this book that I read. This is a little bit off topic, except that I came across it while I was looking stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And hold on, let me get into here. And it's called The Bible Doesn't Say That. 40 Biblical Mistranslations, Misconceptions, and Other Misunderstandings by Joel M. Hoffman.
Okay.
Okay. And he supplied some of the notes that I read, or some of the information that I was reading about the mistranslations of the dragon, the tan versus tannin versus tannum.
Right.
And I just want to add that to our list of books to get to someday.
Sure.
Because it just sounds like right up our alley.
Yeah.
And I wanted to credit him with that information. I got that from him.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is our wrap up. Are you, sir, ready to get into a quiz?
I guess.
Okay. Now, you have big shoes to fill because I only missed one.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So I did really well.
I'll try to be on my best Lamentations knowledgeable, footing here.
All right. According to Lamentations, this is number 1.
Yeah.
According to Lamentations, who ruled over them? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple choice.
Okay.
Mighty men, slaves, strangers, prophets.
Slaves.
Correct. I mean,
right.
I'll tell you when we're done, but that's the right answer. Okay. Number 2. What did the soul of the writer of Lamentations say the Lord is? A redeemer, a portion, a provider, or a keeper?
Provider.
That is incorrect.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what it is when we're done.
Got it.
Number 3. According to Lamentations, what should one wait quietly for? Wars, an answer from the Lord, salvation of the Lord, or whatever will happen.
Salvation from the Lord.
I think that's what I picked, and I think that's wrong.
Oh,
I think that's the one I missed.
Then,
yeah,
maybe?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Number 4. Who wrote the Book of Lamentations?
Jeremiah.
Yeah, that's a
right.
supposedly.
That's a gimme.
The other choices were Esther, David, or Jonah, who we haven't even got to yet. Number 5. What did the writer of Lamentations ask the people to do for the lives of their children? Cry, lift up their hands, pour out their hearts like water, or all of the above?
All of the above?
Yeah, actually, I think that's the one I missed.
Oh, okay.
And I think all of the above is the correct answer.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't remember what the answer was to that other one.
Sure.
Okay. Number 6. When is it good for a man to bear the yoke? In his childhood, when he is old, in times of need, or in his youth?
In his youth.
Correct. Which I don't understand what the difference is between in his childhood versus in his youth.
I'm assuming youth means young man.
Like,
like not
teens
childhood
and 20s.
versus, yeah.
Okay,
So,
like childhood as a kid.
right.
Under 18 in America.
Well, I would imagine that young adults or youth in those times would have been probably 12 or somewhere, I don't know, but
okay.
definitely not as old as we would put a young adult.
Right.
So not as old as we would put a young adult.
Number 7. According to Lamentations, what were the young men compelled to do, and under what did boys stagger, respectively? Dig wells and loads of iron, pass through fire and heavy weight, grind at the mill and loads of wood, or melt iron and bricks?
Mill and wood.
Yep, that's the right one. And actually, I have a note about that if you're interested.
Okay.
One of the commentaries mentioned that they were forced to do women's work.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh.
And that's why that stuck in my head. That's why I got the right one.
Interesting.
Yeah. I was like, oh, did they have to do women? Did they have to do their own laundry and cook dinner? Poor boys. Like, fuck off.
Right.
Okay. I'm not saying grinding at the mill is rough work, and so is having to carry loads of wood.
Right.
Can't it just be rough work?
Yeah.
Why you got to call it women's work? What, you can't do that?
Right.
That's hard?
Yeah.
No, these people were fucking suffering. They were doing hard-ass labor, not just quote-unquote women's work.
Right.
Like, fuck off. Number 8. How did the writer of Lamentations say they get their bread? At the peril of their lives, under pressure, with great joy, or with sacrifices?
At the peril of their lives.
Correct. Number 9, in Lamentations chapter 2, what did the writer call to mind and made him to have hope? Steadfast love of the Lord, God's covenant, temple of Jerusalem, or the Lord has great might?
Can you repeat those answers again?
Steadfast love of the Lord, God's covenant, temple of Jerusalem, the Lord has great might.
Go with steadfast love of the Lord.
Okay, I don't remember. I know I got it right, but I don't remember.
Okay, all right.
Number 10, according to Lamentations, who did they say sinned and they bear the person's iniquities? Their prophets, their kings, their fathers, or all of the above?
All of the above.
I don't think that's right.
No?
I think it's their fathers, but I could be wrong.
Okay.
Okay, number 11. According to Lamentations, what did the hands of compassionate women do? Fought for their own children, boiled their own children, acquired weapons, cultivated fields.
Boiled their own children.
Yes, that is grossly correct.
Yeah.
All right. Checking results.
All right.
Okay. According to Lamentations, who ruled over them? Yes, slaves. You got that right.
Yeah.
Number 2, you got this one wrong. What did the soul of the writer of Lamentations say the Lord is? You picked provider, but the answer was portion. The Lord is your portion.
Got it.
And I came across that several times in my notes. That's how I was able to get it right.
Sure.
So, sorry.
No, it's all right.
You got this one right. Number 3, according to Lamentations, what should one wait quietly for? Salvation of the Lord. You got it right.
Okay.
Number 4, you got this one right as well. Who wrote the Book of Lamentations?
Jeremiah.
Yep. Number 5, you got this one right. What did the writer of Lamentations ask the people to do for the lives of their children? The answer you got right is all of the above. Cry, lift up their hands, and pour out their hearts like water.
Okay.
Number 6, when is it good for a man to bear the yoke? In his youth. You got that right.
Yep.
Number 7, according to Lamentations, what were the young men compelled to do? Grind at the mill. And what did boys stagger under? Loads of wood. You got it right. Number 8, how did the writer of Lamentations say they get their bread? At the peril of their lives. Yep, got it right. Number 9, in Lamentations chapter 2, what did the writer hope to call to mind and made him to have hope? Steadfast love of the Lord. You got it right. Good on you.
All right.
Number 10, you got this one wrong, which I told you.
Yeah.
According to Lamentations, who did they say sinned and they bear the person's iniquities?
The fathers, apparently.
The fathers. You picked all of the above, which would have included their prophets and their kings.
Right.
But I remember specifically it did say their fathers because we were like, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Okay. And last one, number 11. According to Lamentations, what did the hands of compassionate women do? You got this one right. They boiled their own children, which is disgusting.
Yes.
And you got 9 right out of 11.
It's not bad.
I did better than you, though.
Yeah, you did.
So I'm the winner.
You do the research.
I do the research, and I come across stuff that I don't always even mention.
Right.
That I don't know is going to be on the quiz. So I'm better prepared.
I didn't prep for this other than just reading through with you.
Yep. So you did good, though. You got an 81%, and the success rate from all players on this is 54%.
Ooh, man.
Yeah. So me and you both did good because since I only missed one, I got a 90-something.
Right.
So
amazing.
We both did amazing.
All right. So you got anything else for us today, or?
We're about done with Lamentations.
Yeah, we got our...
Try to find some "you're always wrong" contradictions.
Yeah. And then I think we're going to try to do a Patreon this week, or what are we doing this week as far as... Are we doing a special this week? I know we've been kind of off our game with trying to get stuff out lately, so...
I was not sure that we were going to do that. I think that the contradictions was probably going to come out on Sunday, and then we were going to start the next chapter 1 of whatever the fuck that one is.
Well, we'll see how things go. We're definitely, did I say? I think that's right, yeah. We are falling behind on some of the extra stuff that we normally do, so we'll talk about it, and then we'll figure it out. So
maybe we'll do both. Who knows?
Maybe we'll do both. Who knows?
I mean, we've been known to put out 2 episodes in the same day.
Like, yesterday we put out 2 episodes.
Like last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was Lamentations Wrap-Up, and we will definitely be back tomorrow with...
You're always wrong.
Or contradictions. So we'll see you guys then.
Bye.
Hey, wife. I guess that's the end?
But husband, that's just sad.
It doesn't have to be. We are on lots of social media platforms like Twitter. Our handle there is sacrilegious_D.
For D's nuts.
Oh my God. Stop doing that. Anyway, we're also on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. There's a link to all of our social media sites at our website.
Ooh, we have a website?
Yeah, it's sacrilegiousdiscourse.com, where you can also find a link to our merch shop.
We have a merch shop?
Yep, we have podcast-themed clothing, mugs, notebooks, and more, as well as an atheist and science-themed products.
Wow, our fans should really go check that out right now.
Definitely. They can get in touch with us by sending an email to sacrilegiousdiscourse@gmail.com. But before they do that, we could really use some help.
Oh yeah? With what?
Well, it's not free running the podcast, and we need some financial support in order to get better equipment, which will free up time so we can concentrate on our podcast and our fans.
Okay, so what should they do?
Head over to patreon.com/sacrilegiousdiscourse and sign up as a contributor on our podcast. Supporters there receive additional bi-weekly episodes that we record just for our Patreon members for as little as $2 a month.
Also, we'd really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using.
And Apple Podcast reviews help us out tremendously.
Like and subscribe. Leave an Apple review. Join us on Twitter. Support us on Patreon. That's a lot of instructions. Don't forget to say thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.